tutorial. Now we come to the main work, which is to creating our model and our data, which is to create our model and data. Okay, so now we are looking at this application, which is the student management. Now you can see that when you look at your student management application, which is an application under the coding school project, now you see that we have a file called models. We have a file called models. This is where you define your models. And when we look at model is just, in simple term, a database table. Database table is just what we can call a model. Like for a database table, your project can have several database table. You can have student database, you can have student table, you can have maybe course table, you can have assessment table, you can have score table, you can have grade table, you can even have maybe payment details table. So each table now stands for, okay, which data do you want to get from the user of your application. So but for now we are dealing with the student data. And for the student data, you should know that the information you want to get from the student can varies. And for this, you can then come here and say, okay, now don't forget it's just a database table. Now, for our database table, let's now go ahead to create our model. Now, once you create your model, you go the class. To create your model, you go the class, and the class, the name of the table, which in this case I'm calling students. So student, we are going to confirm minutes later, so which in this case I'm calling a student. And in because you are defining this as a model, you should then go models dot model. I think issues. So we have our class. Now we have our model students, which is going to be the name of our table. So for the students, what are the parameters you expect to get from the student? Of course, you should expect to get your first name, maybe first name, and you define what you want the first name to be. Models dot character feed. If you have installed Python for your VS Code, you see different options of what you can call your models. You can see date feed, you can see date time feed, you can see decimal feed, and so on. You can see email feed. It depends on what on the record you want to get. But for a first name, you expect some set of alphabets and the like. So that's why we're going to be defining our model as character feed. And you can also define the length too. Okay, I don't expect more than this length. Of course, you should not expect a typical name to be more than maybe 50 characters. So you can just define your maximum length to be possibly 50. So, and you can also define the last name of the student too. Last name. These are the records you expect the student to supply you anytime they are dealing with your application. So we'll go the models dot character feed, and you can see different all these types of feed you can get from your user in Django documentation if you want more based on your predefined need. So we go the max length again. So let's define our max length to also be 50 in this case. So that we see another type of other types of character other types of models that we can get. Let's say we want to get the age of the students. So the age, in this case, we have the models. And for age, you don't expect age to be an alphabet. You expect age to be a number. Maybe the student age is 12, the student age is 18. Now you just go the integer feed. So integer feed, let's just leave that for now. We can also set validators for our models. But okay, let's just go and see. Okay, maybe you don't maybe you are designing your application for maybe university students. You don't expect a university student to be less than age 14. So you can just say, okay, you can set some validators for your feed, so that you just set your validators. And to set your validators, you should come to this you should come and import that module from Django.call.validators. And what do you need from the validators? you can import minimum value validator, and you can also install import maximum value. Of course, you see maximum length validator too, but that max length to have do that for us. But let's see maximum value validator. So now we can set validators for our model feed. So you can say validators, and you set the validators to be an array, and for the array you can set series of validators for this particular feed, which is under model student. So we can set our minimum value validator to, okay, since you are designing an application, maybe the application is for university students, it should, we are not expecting university students to be less than 14 years of age. So I say the minimum value validator is 14, and I can also set the maximum value. Of course, we don't expect anybody to be more than 100 years. We can set on it. So anytime the user is entering some values for this feed, if they enter something like, maybe, some user can be very funny and they can decide to maybe enter -10 for their age. Of course, no age should take -10. So this feed will definitely not accept that. So it's just a way of you protecting your database from wrong entries from the user. So I think let's just look at one more feed. So we have looked at character feed, we have looked at integer feed. So let's look at one more entry as before we proceed. We have boolean feed, we have date feed, and so on and so forth. But as time goes on, we'll be seeing other examples. So let's look at the student email. Of course, you want to take the email address of the student. So models, and in this case, before we have seen email feed. So we define the email feed and we just leave this. So if the user enter anything that is not email, then this particular feed will not accept it. This particular feed will not accept it. So now that we have our models defined, now it's now time for us to run our migration. Now, when you have defined your model, migration is just a way of you saving the model and committing it to the database. So you have defined it at the user end. Creating a migration is now a way of you, okay, I've created this application. Now I want to save it to the database so that my database will take that structure. My database will take that form of validation. Now, the first thing after you have defined your model, to save your migration, you then go py. It's still the same thing, it will still do the same thing. So let's just do py, and we go manage.py, and we go make migration, so that we create our migration and confirm that the model we have created is the same with what we will get before we now commit the database, before we now commit the changes to the database. Now we have make our migration, student management. Okay, so you can see that I'm actually getting an error here, and of course it's normal for you to get an error as a programmer, but it's also good I show you how I'm able to troubleshoot the error and how I'm able to arrive at the solution, at the working solution. Now I told you need to register your application for the project. Now you look at it, I actually called the application under the project as student management, but when I was registering it, you can see that I misspelled the student management. So that was why it's telling me here that there's no module name student management. So you can see that the spelling I got there is the same spelling that I gave when I was installing the application, but the name I actually called the application is different, which is actually a correct spelling. So let's go ahead now and correct our mistake. So you should pay attention to details so that you not give yourself too much problem as a programmer. So you save it now. So now that you have saved it, let's now run the migration again. Now you can see now that there's no error again because our problem has been solved. Now we have our migration. Once you make the migration, you can then come to this migrations folder, and you will see that you have your first migration. Now you can just check and be sure that, okay, this is what I've defined. You can see that it will create a model, and the name of that model, which is a database table in simple term, is student. And you can see that for that student table, you have your feed as ID. This ID is automatically generated for you as your primary key feed. as a primary key field, which will be automatically generated. So the first one will be 1, the second will be 2. So it will be unique for every record that is saved in this database. So you have your ID, and another field is your first name, which is what you define, and you gave it a character field and max length of 50, and last name and the age and the email based on what we have defined. You can see that we set some extra validation for the age field, and you can see that even in the migration it is also reflecting. And for your email feed, the same thing too. So but you look at it that for the email feed we did not set any maximum length, so Django just take discretion of setting the maximum length to be 255 characters. So that is also good. Of course, we don't expect any write email to be more than 255 characters. Now that we have been able to create our migrations, so we have seen and we have confirmed, okay, this migration is the right thing that we want to do. So we then go ahead and commit it to our database, and to commit it to our database, all we just need to do is just do py or Python. For short, you can just say py or py. So manage.py, and after that we then migrate. So this we commit to the database our changes. You can see that this is actually much because Django has some pre-built functionalities that there's also a migration for. So apart from the migration that we created, there are some pre-built functionality that is shipped with Django, and that is why the migration that we are running is this much. Because so subsequently when we are running another migration or we are committing to our database, it will not be this much. But because this is the first time that we are running this migration for this application, that is why it is that much.